Hi, this is Steve Rigolosi, and tonight on Forgotten Mysteries, I have for you The Darkest Hour by William P. McGivern. This is copyright 1955 by Dodd and Mead, and let's just take a moment to appreciate this really great noir jacket design. It takes place on the docks of New York City, and you can see the boat there, and the watchman's shack, and a menacing figure in the foreground. Just really beautiful design that makes use of just a few limited colors to sort of grab you. So very nice cover design. Before I tell you how much I loved this book, let me just tell you a little bit about William McGivern. There's really not a lot to say except that he was a successful and very well reviewed, very well received mystery suspense novelist. Probably did about 20 books. I've read quite a number of them, not all of them. What I find is that his earlier books, maybe the first half of his career, tend more towards the sort of noir, hard-boiled, sort of traditional type PI and cop kind of stuff. The later books, he really kind of went in interestingly different directions, writing capers and just sort of these quirky suspense novels, which maybe, stretch the bounds of reality a little bit, but always fun to read. And I think that is one of the things that makes McGivern so popular among his devotees. Is this man is easy to read. I mean, he goes down like ice cream on a summer's day. The writing is so beautiful. So a little bit about the plot. Not super complicated. A very honest cop, Steve Retnick, has just been let out of 5 years in prison for a crime that he did not commit. And not only did he not commit it, everybody knows, all his friends, the police, the detectives, everybody know that he did not commit this crime, but he's convicted on circumstantial evidence. And the 5 years in prison have changed him, not for the better. He gets out with a single-minded focus on revenge. He is going to find the man or the person who killed the man he was accused of killing, who was actually a friend of his. The last week that he's in prison, he receives a letter from a friend of his saying, "I know who did it. And as soon as you get out of prison, come down here and tell me. Come down here and I will tell you who it is, and we'll figure out a plan." But before that can happen, before Steve gets out of prison, his letter writer friend, his correspondent, is killed. So Steve is left on his own to figure out who it was and to bring this person to justice. So let me just give props to a lead character named Steve. You don't see a lot of Stevens anymore under my age. Not a big name with the jet set. The young, hip kids are not naming their children Steven. But Steve Retnick here is a nice, tough, hard-boiled guy. And I was like, okay, I could maybe learn a few things from him about being menacing and having my words taken very seriously the minute they drop out of my mouth. So the book basically becomes Steve's search for the real murderer. And because he was a cop and because he was a good cop, he has a lot of friends still on the force who want to help him, but they know that within the scope of their job, there's only so far they can go, right? They can maybe push the boundaries a little bit, but there's a certain line that they can't step over. And the cops, the real world cops, are not willing to do that, but Steve is, because like I said, he is single-minded in his pursuit, much like Mike Hammer is in Mickey Spillane's book, I, the Jury, which if you're interested in, there is a video of that book, video review of that book posted on this channel. But they're very, very different books. And as much as I liked I, the Jury, The Darkest Hour is a vastly superior book in all ways and by all accounts. So while you would think, okay, this is a plot maybe that we've seen before, you know, we've seen the setting before, we've seen New York, it's used constantly, you know, as the setting for crime books and noir books, you know, you might sort of just expect business as usual. But I have to tell you, McGivern elevates this book to a level that I marveled at. There are so many things to love about this book. The first is the writing is just so precise and clear and sharp and insightful and concise. When McGivern describes a scene or a person, you see it. You see it there instantly, and it stays in your head. And when he's building characters, you feel like you are with these people, watching them as they have their reactions and as they grow or backslide or expose their vulnerabilities or show what they're really made of. Something he does that is really just sort of extraordinary, and it's a small detail, but you know, there are always walk-on characters in any book, right? You know, a cabbie, the waitress at the local Greasy Spoon, you know, some pedestrian on 9th Avenue. And even when the hero interacts with these people for half a page or 2 paragraphs, you feel that person. That person is drawn for you. And what they say is interesting. They're things that real people would say rather than platitudes. So there's really no level of this book that McGivern did not pay close attention to, from the, you know, the high level plotting to the people on the ground and the details. Just marvelous. The hero, you feel incredible. I hate that word incredible. I promised myself I would never use it. You feel extreme and real sympathy for Steve Retnick. He has been railroaded, and it has made him bitter, but not bitter enough to the point that he's hard to be around. It's just made him very focused on what his goal is. But you see him kind of pretending to be a little bit harder, a little bit more heartless than he really is, particularly in his relationship with his wife. So when he was convicted and sent up the river, you know, he told his wife, knock me out of your life, you know, divorce me, you know, like he was so shamed and so embarrassed, he didn't want to bring that onto his wife. And his wife loves him and does not want to let him go. But in the 5 years he's away, she has one little dalliance that he finds out about, and he's really furious about it, although he doesn't really have a right to be, because he told her to divorce him, and he loves her and she loves him, but he won't let himself get close to her again. And she wants him back. She wants their marriage back. She misses him and makes it very clear to him that the past is the past, and she knows he's innocent, but he can't break away from this hard-boiled crust that he has developed. And he is pretty mean to her. And in her defense, Marcia is her name, she is such a balanced and nuanced character in that she does love him, and she's willing to put up with some of his behavior, but only to a certain extent. There comes a point where she says, you know what? I'm done trying with you. I've done everything I can. I love you, but I'm not going to be treated like this. I'm not going to let you talk to me this way. I'm better than this, and I don't deserve what you're giving me. And I have to say, to the point, some of these actions, these passages and some of these conversations really had me welling up because they were so heartfelt and real and touching. You just have to see McGivern at work doing this. It's a marvel to behold. I mean, even though the pages flew by very quickly, I didn't want them to. I wanted to savor the language and savor the moral dilemmas. What happens is, I don't want to get into a spoiler with this, but let's just say Steve goes a little too far and there are some really negative effects. And it's these effects that help him realize what he has become and that he doesn't want to be that. And he has that sort of growth, that epiphany. He doesn't all of a sudden, by the end of the book become some, bright, sunny airhead. But you see a character arc in here that is really the mark of really great fiction. People who put down the genre say, oh, books, mysteries, they're flat, they're formulaic, it's the same sort of stereotypical characters, in every book. But this book goes far beyond that. It's labeled a red badge mystery. I'll show you again. There you go, red badge mystery. But it's beyond that. It is a true novel of morality and redemption and development and conflict and resolution. I mean, all in 180 pages. And this led me to an epiphany that I want to share with you guys. I've always liked hardboiled, and if you watch this channel, that most of the books that I read and review here are about 200 pages. Some get up to like 220, maybe 250. I like a short book, and it's not because I don't have the attention span to read a long book. It's that in 200 pages, really, there's no time for waste. There's no time for extraneous pontification or garbage or over descriptions or scenes that don't mean anything. These early books, I think the editors really worked at making sure that the writers did not pad their books in any way, which is sort of my approach when I am editing fiction. Is, I get out my red pen and I gleefully X out page after page, paragraph after paragraph, because you don't want your reader to get bored. You want your reader to have a level of engagement that starts out high and remains high throughout the book. So many books published nowadays, there's that dip in the middle. I call it the dreaded dip, where you're like, okay, let's get something happening here. And it's almost always another body falls, right? That's what furthers the plot, another death. In my opinion, rather a lazy way to keep your plot moving. But it is sort of a standard. In McGivern's books and other great books of this era, there is no fat. And it just makes for an intense, absorbing reading experience that is what I want from a book. I have a lot of McGivern books on my shelf, but you can see them. They're kind of up there on the top shelf. I don't read more than one a year because he is to be savored, right? I just want to read him once a year and savor what he does and how he accomplishes things, and to sort of marvel at his abilities and his creativity, and above all, the way he writes. So I mentioned Mickey Splain's I, the Jury earlier. The first book in the Mike Hammer series, interesting introduction to the violent, hardcore Mike Hammer. But it does not have the nuance that this book has. It does not have the character development that this book has. It does not have the the plot and the moral dilemmas that this book has. I mean, this book is just superior in every way. So I have to say, one of my favorite books of the year so far, William P. McGivern, The Darkest Hour. Check him out. It is sure to be interesting. Some of the other writers that I gush about on this channel are Andrew Garve and Andrew Vox, and I love so many of them that I forget who I gush about. Julian Simmons, Michael Gilbert, and he's really up there. Ursula Curtis, he's really up there with, in my mind, the top mystery writers of all time. So please, his books, you can find them, and they're available as ebooks and so forth. So I can't recommend him highly enough. And if this is the first time you've heard of him, I feel delighted to have been able to bring him to your attention. So this video felt good to make. It's so nice to really gush. I can't find anything to criticize about this book. That's how good it is. Maybe sometimes the tough characters cave in a little too easily, don't fight back quite hard enough, but that's a small point. And I guess if you've got Steve Retnick, this kind of monster looming over you, I could see where you would cave pretty quickly. And he's also a marvel of speaking softly and carrying a big stick. He's not babbling on at the mouth the way I do in these videos. When he says something, it's a simple sentence, 2 sentences combined, and then he waits for the dominoes to fall. I mean, if I could have that level of command as a person, I could be running Apple, the evil empire. So that's it for tonight. Thank you for listening, and I will be back next time. I hope with a book that I love as much. We'll see. Okay, good night.